and we're going to talk about what does it mean that you were not selected, and what are your options. I mean, obviously, what it means is pretty straightforward. You were not selected for the Dream for All voucher. The question is, should you move forward? Should you proceed? Should you just wait? And that's really the hardest decision to wrap your head around is, should I do something now or should I wait? Well, should you buy now? That's the ultimate question. And the truth is, everybody on the wait list actually has a harder decision to make than you do. Because the people who are on the wait list, they have to decide, should they wait and hope that they get picked, or should they just pull the trigger now? And for you, it's simpler. You don't have the option of waiting and getting picked. And so the first question everybody asks me is, John, is there going to be money next year? I don't think so. The budget allocation was actually allocated 2 years ago in 2022, and it was supposed to all be used in 2023. And then the state postponed part of it, and they moved part of it into 2024. But there was no additional money allocated in 2023. The state budget right now is being finalized, and I looked at the budget. There is zero money being allocated for the upcoming year. So the state budget year runs from July 1st through June 30th. And so your budget is being passed right now, and it says there's no money for Dream for All for the coming year. So the first chance we have for new Dream for All money is July 1st of 2025. 1 year from now is when money might be eligible. But the problem is that we have proof from the last 2 years that it took them basically 9 months into the following year to actually release the money. So if there's more money allocated next year, you actually won't see it until April of 2026 if they follow the same pattern that they've been following. So we are a good 2 years away from potentially having any more Dream for All money. And the question is, should you wait? Well, ultimately, it comes down to, what are you spending in rent right now compared to what can you afford to spend for a house payment? And so you have to look at that and say, well, if my spend right now on a monthly payment is the most I can afford in rent, and the only way that I could afford to buy a home was with Dream for All, because it provided me a significantly lower monthly payment for that price point that it took to become a homeowner, then buying a home isn't a good idea for you right now. Because even though in the long term, homeownership is a great idea, and I'm a huge proponent of homeownership, you have to survive the short term. You have to be able to make the monthly payments. You have to A, qualify for the mortgage, B, be able to pay the monthly payment. And so the question becomes, can I even make this work? Now, for some people, it's simple. I can't. For others, it's more complicated. I can, but maybe I'm allocating money to other places. Maybe I'm allocating money right now to pay for putting money away for the future, putting money into savings accounts, putting money into my 401k. And I'm going to show you in a couple minutes the wealth building effect of homeownership and how that works. And so if you're saying, hey, I'm allocating money over here and I can't afford to put more money into a house payment, well, maybe you shift your thinking on what I'm doing to build wealth. Where am I putting my money for wealth building? And should I instead shift my money to putting towards my house payments? Because homes appreciate based on the purchase price, not how much you put as a down payment. So if you're saying, hey, I'm going to put an extra $500 a month into my 401k, and my 401k is going to grow by 10% per year. Well, that means you're putting basically $6,000 a year into your 401k. That $6,000 a year grows by $600 a year. But instead, if you took that $500 a month and put it towards a house payment so you could afford to pay a higher house payment. Now you lose the tax benefit of the 401k, but you get some major tax benefits of homeownership. So it's a trade-off, and sometimes even better on the side of homeownership. Now you own an asset. You own a $500,000 home that you couldn't afford until you took that $500 a month from your 401k and put it over here. But now that $500,000 home goes up by 1%. That means that it decreases by $5,000. $5,000 in a year. Your $500 in your 401k made you $600 in a year if it went up by 10%. A mortgage, owning a home, makes you $5,000 a year if it goes up by 1%. And the average appreciation in the state of California historically has been 4 to 6% per year. And that includes the bad years in the early 90s, the bad years in the late 2000s. All of those put together, this report was pulled in 2022. So it goes back basically from the early 90s until 2022. And I did another one that found another one created in 2017 that kind of has the same thing that says, hey, so it ignores the era of home prices in the early 2000s, but it includes the drop in home prices in the early 90s. Same thing, 4 to 6% appreciation. Google it yourself, average home price appreciation in California. You will see that the number is 4 to 6%. So if you have a $500,000 home that goes up by 5% per year, that increase is $25,000. That is way more than you're ever going to get an increase in your 401k in a typical year. And then the next year you get another 25,000, and the next year you get another 25,000. So the key is, can you make it work in the short term? Because in the long term, owning a home is significantly better than renting. And so what I want to talk through is kind of some of the ways that you can still buy now, because one of the challenges that a lot of people have is saying, John, I can only buy if I got Dream for All, and now that I don't have it, I can't make this work. Well, let me show you some of the math. So the first thing is, can I buy now? You can, and we can still do 0 down payments. The key is you still got to pay for closing costs. And there's not a lot of money going around right now to pay for closing costs. So you're looking at around 4% on average for the closing costs, 4% of the purchase price. And so you need to get a seller credit or use your own money for closing costs, okay? Aside from that, what you're looking at is you're looking at 2 scenarios. So either your payment will be higher for the same purchase price, or your price has to be lower in order to keep the same monthly payment you were planning to have with Dream for All. So let's look at those numbers and see what they look like. Let's assume that you were looking at a $650,000 price point for Dream for All. Let me see if I can get my tools here. How do I get my, nope, I don't see, Zoom's changed the layout and I cannot, nope, okay. Anyway, I was gonna try and have a little circle or a little pointer tool that I could show you, but it doesn't look like they have the pointer tool anymore. All right, well, you can see my mouse hopefully. So you're buying a house at $650,000, you got $130,000 from the Dream for All program. So you've got a $520,000 loan amount, rated about 6.99, put your payment at $4,322, including taxes and insurance, and you're coming up with about $26,000 out of pocket. That's what it would have looked like if you were paying your own closing costs on Dream for All for a $650,000 home. Now, what if you wanted to get the same monthly payments? To have that same monthly payment of around $4,300, $4,400 a month, your price has to drop from $650 down to $535. Because remember, you were qualified for a loan amount and a payment of $520. Well, now we've got to lower your loan amount a little bit more because we have mortgage insurance, but your property taxes are lower because your purchase price is down. So you've got to have a cut of about $115,000. And for some people, that's the end of the discussion, because there aren't homes that are significantly cheaper. They were already looking at the lowest price points in their region. But you have to think beyond that. You have to think, well, maybe I should change where I'm buying. Maybe I should add a little bit of a commute in order to be able to do this. Maybe I should look at buying a lower priced home. Maybe I should look at a starter home instead of buying my perfect home. And so you have to kind of look at, what concessions can I make? What changes can I make to my thinking in order to be able to get in on homeownership? Because getting in on homeownership is the key. If you're simply looking for, how can I get my dream home, or how can I get the right home, it might not happen. But if you get into a home, then you can sell that home and upgrade, or you can add on to that home down the road when interest rates fall. You have lots of ways to make the home ownership journey work. It's just sometimes not going to be the first stop where you ultimately want to be. You have to kind of follow a ladder, go stair steps to get to the house that you want. Now, what if you said, I wanted to have the same price as I had with Dream for All, but not using Dream for All? to have a $650,000 home, no longer having Dream for All, just using the regular down payment assistance, you're still coming up with just the closing costs, okay? The closing costs are a little bit higher because some of the closing costs are based on the loan amount, but you're looking at still a similar amount of cash out of pocket. You have a payment of almost $1,000 a month more. So that's a big thing, is people are like, John, I can't afford $1,000 a month more. Well, maybe you can by pulling back on your 401k. Maybe you can by cutting back a little bit on some of your other spending. Now, I am not a fan of being house poor. I'm not a fan of saying, do whatever it takes. Just find a way to make the monthly payment. Life happens. Things happen. I don't want you to be in a position where you are sacrificing everything. But the best things in life come sometimes on the other side of sacrifice. It's instant gratification versus long-term gain. And so the question is, are there some things that you can change? Are there some shifts that you can make? Again, maybe you're not putting as much money into your retirement plan or into your monthly savings, but you are getting monthly savings built through home ownership. So that's the key that you want to pay attention to, is how can I afford that extra $1,000 a month? Or can I find a home that's $130,000, $115,000 cheaper, or a combination of both? So let's go ahead. Actually, here's kind of the numbers again. $4,300 a month in payment is what you would have had for a $650,000 home on Dream for All. That same home without Dream for All is $5,300 a month. So maybe you move somebody else in and you get a cosigner and you share the home with them, or you get a roommate. You know, you have to be able to qualify for that $5,300, and you cannot use your roommate's income, but you can use your cosigner's income. So that might be a good way to make it work. So now let's look at big picture. Big picture, a lot of people are disappointed saying, man, I missed out on Dream for All, and to buy the same house, I have to spend a whole lot more money per month. And in long run, that's going to cost me a lot of money in extra monthly payments, John. If I'm spending $1,000 a month extra for 5 years, that's a lot of money I spent in extra monthly payments. But you're no longer sharing money with the state. And equally or more importantly is when you compare to being a renter and you say, hey, maybe I'll rent for a year and I'll buy a year from now, or I'll wait 2 or 3 years from now until Dream for All comes back. Well, look at this chart down here at the bottom. And it says, you know, if you bought a house at $650,000 that appreciated at 5% per year, that means that in 5 years, that house is $830,000. You got a $180,000 increase in 5 years that you didn't get. You didn't get a part of that because you were sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to come back in the future. So as an example, if you waited a year, that $650,000 house is now selling for $682,000. This is not a promise. This is just statistics. You wait 2 years and it's $716,000 for the same house. You wait 3 years and it's $752,000. It's $100,000. The house has gone up in 3 years, and you have to pay that higher price for the home at that time. Or you can buy now and you can invest an extra $1,000 a month compared to what you were planning on spending, assuming you can afford that money out of your pocket. So what would you owe in 5 years? Well, I'm going to compare this to Dream for All because a lot of people have ran their numbers and said, I think it's worth it because I'm going to do the Dream for All program, and I don't really care about owing the state money. Well, let's look at it. The Dream for All, your first mortgage went in 5 years down from $520 to $489. So you paid about $31,000 in principal. That's critical to understand, that when you are a homeowner, part of your monthly payment goes back into your future net worth because it pays down your balance. So part of your payment when you're making a mortgage, and I'll show you in a minute the math and how it works, is what I call forced savings. So maybe you stop putting money into your regular savings account or your extra savings because you've got a forced savings account built into this the mortgage that you don't get as a renter. Now, the appreciation, the house we just showed you, went up by almost $180,000. So you owe Dream for All 20% of the appreciation, or almost $36,000, and the $130,000 they originally loaned you. So once you figure out, hey, I'm selling the house, and we already said a second ago that the house would be worth $830,000. So you're selling the house for $830,000. I ignored realtor fees and other fees in here, so you will have that cost. But ultimately, your net before your fees is you're getting about $174,000 if you use Dream for All. But let's compare that. So here's the $174,000 number here in the first column. But let's look at if you use the My Home program. The My Home program is also a CalHFA program. You do have to be a first-time home buyer to utilize that program, which all of you are. That's why, because you were going into Dream for All. But the My Home program gives you 3% for the down payment. You're making a payment on 97% of the purchase price. So you have that extra $1,000 a month in monthly payment that you're having to spend. But let's look at what the benefit is. So your first mortgage went from 630 down to 593. Part of that $1,000 is you're putting more money towards principal every month. As a matter of fact, you are, use some of these numbers down here at the bottom. I think I talked about how much you get in extra principal. We talked about the tax. I didn't talk about how much extra principal. I'll show you in a second how much extra principal you get per month. But you're having to write a check for $972 a month extra for 5 years. So that's almost $60,000 in extra payments. Well, that sucks that you have to pay that extra money. But here's the trade-off. The trade-off is you're going to net $41,000 in extra money compared to Dream for All. Now, you spent $58,000 in extra payments, and you are only getting an extra $41,000 in your pocket at the end of 5 years. So is it equal to Dream for All? No. So you're actually costing an extra almost $17,000 going this route. So it is not as good as Dream for All, but there's some other benefits that make it's not as bad as what you think. Okay, you're not spending $60,000 extra to own a home. You're spending about $16,000 extra because you don't pay very much in appreciation. See, with the Dream for All program, you're paying $35,000, $36,000 of your home value when you sell the house. With the My Home program, you're only paying them 1% per year, which comes out to $975 extra in your on your second mortgage for what you have to pay back in interest over the 5-year timeline. That saves you $34,941 less money that you're paying to the state of California. That's a huge amount of savings that goes into your pocket. On top of that, basically you get a bigger tax write-off, and you are paying more money down towards your principal. So it is very, very similar in the long run, doing a small down payment, not Dream for All loan, because a large portion of the extra money you're paying in monthly payments, you're recovering by having extra proceeds from the sale of your home down the road. Plus you get a bigger tax write-off, because you don't get to write off any of that $35,000 that you paid to the state for appreciation. That's not interest, so that's not a tax write-off. But you are paying a higher interest payment on the My Home program, and that means you get a bigger tax write-off. So ultimately, assuming 5% appreciation, your home would cost you about $32,000. You know what? Honestly, I don't know how I came up with that number. I'm going to ignore that part. I'm going to stick right here. Because really what you're looking at is about $16,000 more than what it would have cost you on Dream for All over a 5-year time frame. That's $281 a month, but you get a bigger tax write-off and more in principal reduction. So let me show you how these numbers work. So we're going to go through a worksheet called Why Buy Now? Now the question becomes, should I buy now, or should I wait until house prices come down, or should I wait until interest rates come down? I don't see house prices coming down. As a matter of fact, I do see interest rates coming down at some point in the next few years, but I believe when they do, house prices are going up because people are sitting on the sidelines waiting for rates to drop, and there's not enough houses for everybody out there. Therefore, you're going to be in a position where you're competing with a lot more people at that point in time, and prices, in my opinion, are going to go up. So the Why Buy Now worksheet, very simply, let's put this back up here, very simply says, hey, if I had done the Dream for All loan and bought a house for $650,000 and I owed $520,000, then I've got a payment of about $4,250, including taxes and insurance. Now you might say, John, I'm only paying $2,500 a month in rent, so that was stretching it on Dream for All with a payment of $4,250. But here's what really happens. You get a tax deduction for being a homeowner. Now, this is a ballpark number. You got to talk to your tax advisor about it. But you get to write off, if you're in a tax bracket of $83,000 or more, you get to write off 22% of your you pay 22% of your income in taxes to the state and to the IRS, the federal government. If you make more than that, if you make over 178,000, it's about 24% paid in taxes. Let's just assume that you're in a 22% tax bracket. That means that the interest that you are paying is a deduction of your income. You don't pay taxes on that portion of your income. That can save you up to $815 a month. And this is if you were doing Dream for All with the 20% down payment. And then you've got forced savings. That's the amount that's paying down your balance every month. And that's $427 a month in forced savings. And then you have the appreciation. Now, I'm using a low number of 3% appreciation, and that is $1,625 a month that your home value goes up. So you say, John, I was stretching to add $1,700 a month to my house payment on Dream for All. Well, the truth is you weren't adding anything. You actually were saving about $1,200 a month once you factor in all of the wealth building that you were getting by being a homeowner compared with being a renter. So now, John, what happens with, since I can't use Dream for All, I need to do the My Home program. So we see right here, we've got $815 and $427. And when we make this change, now the $815 goes to $957. So you're getting about $140 a month bigger tax write-off. On top of that, your forced savings account, the amount of money you're paying down towards principal, goes down by about goes up by about $50 a month. So you're saving an extra $200 a month by having greater tax savings and greater portion paying down your principal. And so it's actually even better benefits. So now your payment went from $2,500 to $5,200. Like, John, I couldn't afford the $4,200. There's no way I can afford the $5,200. But remember, you're getting about $3,100 a month in average wealth building. This is not money that shows up in your pocket. The tax savings you actually can get in your pocket by changing your withholdings. The forced savings is equity you're building later by paying down your balance. The appreciation is equity you're building for later because the value of the home has gone up. But essentially, once you subtract out the wealth building, your payment of $5,200 really is equal to a $2,100 a month rent payment. So the question is, do you want to keep renting for $2,500 a month, or can you afford to cut back on your 401k sum, cut back on how much you're putting in savings, pull back on how much you're putting towards the IRS for withholdings, and now you found a way to pay the payment for the $5,265 a month, and now you're actually building wealth significantly over time. So you've got $191,000 in wealth building in 5 years. In 30 years, that's $1.5 million in wealth building that you achieved. And that's assuming a 3% appreciation rate. Everything that I've Googled and every chart that I've looked at says that appreciation in California goes up between 4 and 6% per year. So if it's 5% per year on average, you're actually getting $2,700 a month in average appreciation. That's a total of $4,183 in wealth building a month for a trade-off of having a $5,200 a month house payment. Remember, these last two things are later money. This one, the tax savings you can get now or you can get at the end of every year, but you're getting some portion of additional tax savings. That's really the key. When I look at people making the decision to say, John, should I buy a home now, or should I wait until I'm at a point that I can afford to have that higher monthly payment? And the key really comes down to personal decision of now versus later. And I am not here to push you and say you absolutely have to buy a home now. What I'm here to do is to educate you. You got into this program because you were interested in finding out what are the benefits of being a homeowner. What are some of the things that I should be thinking about? Because I wanted to be a homeowner. I wanted to use this program to become a homeowner, but I couldn't because I wasn't selected. And for some people, that's okay for you to say, I'm just going to stay as a renter. But if you can either lower your target budget, lower the amount of money that you are budgeting towards your towards your purchase price, or put yourself in a position where you can afford to stretch your monthly payment higher. The numbers I just went through showed you that in the long run, it is significantly better to be a homeowner than a renter. Matter of fact, a survey was done recently. The average net worth of a homeowner is $393,000. Now, net worth means you add up the total of all the assets you own and you subtract what your balances are on your debts. The average homeowner, $393,000 between their 401k, the equity in their home, any other investments. You want to know what the average net worth is for a renter? $10,450. $10,450 versus $393,000. It's a night and day difference. Now, the moment you become a homeowner, do you immediately go from $10,000 net worth to 393? No, it's averages. But the longer you're a homeowner, the more this stuff adds up. It's how that chart showed that in 30 years, you've paid off your mortgage. And by the way, since you don't have Dream for All, you don't have to worry about having that big money that's due to the state at some point in time. You can refinance as many times as you want without having to pay that big chunk of money. You pay back the smaller money, but that's no big deal. And you own the house in 30 years. It's completely paid off. That house has grown over time, and you've built yourself $1.5 million worth of net worth simply by making a payment for where you live today. That's the key. So I want to wrap up. If there's any questions, if you're watching live, post it into chat. If you're watching recorded, please jump into the comment section and post a comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But I do want to wrap up with next steps. So if you've been pre-approved with me, then we need to set up another one-on-one in order to talk through your particular next steps. If you were not pre-approved with me, if you were pre-approved with another lender and you want to look at what your choices are, then let's get the process started. So you can go to my website or scan that QR code to get to my website, and you can download my mobile app. From there, you can schedule an appointment with me, or you can complete the application, and we can get started with looking at your options to determine what we can do for you. So my goal is to help guide you. It is not to push you. There'll be new programs down the road, but historically, house prices have continued to appreciate. And the question becomes, do I want to cross my fingers and hope that things are going to work in the future? Or should I use this as a sign that it is time for me to make something happen? And ultimately, you'll actually get better options by not being tied to the Dream for All program, not being tied to having to pay them back at a certain period of time, not being stuck only having to refinance once. And ultimately, you are in control. The question is, can you make the numbers work for you? And that's going to take a one-on-one meeting. So I really appreciate everybody listening. It doesn't look like we have any live comments right now, so I'm going to let you all go. If you have any questions about anything at all, please feel free to reach out, and I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful day. We'll talk to you. Oh, there is a question. Hold on one second here. Do these numbers hold for someone who's 60 years old? Yes, they do. So, because I'm only looking at numbers 5 years out, and the math that I showed you said, hey, how much extra do you gain in 5 years? How much extra do you gain in 10 years? And so this isn't about, gosh, I'm going to be 90 by the time that I pay off this mortgage, because you're not necessarily worried about paying off the mortgage. You're going to continue to have appreciation. The price is going to continue to go up, and you're going to continue to pay down your balance. You're able to get another tax write-off, and you're able to then pass that on to your family. There's a lot of legacy behind being able to pass a home on, or being able to pass on the wealth from the home, and your family can sell the home when you're gone. And over time, as you build enough equity, you can tap into that to help you to pay for things in retirement. I have a lot of clients who have that situation. They are looking at reverse mortgages. You got to have a good amount of equity to do a reverse mortgage, but it isn't tied necessarily to your age. Again, you may not necessarily hit the 30-year mark of paying off the mortgage, but all the numbers that I looked at up until then, we're looking at 5-year horizons, and you're looking at, you can make $180,000 in appreciation just in the first 5 years. So it is a significant value, a significant benefit if you can afford the monthly payment. My worry for somebody who's 60, what's income going to look like in retirement? Are you going to be able to afford that monthly payments? And are you planning on moving? A lot of people, when they retire, they move to a less expensive area. Well, I said appreciation averages 4 to 6% per year. The last couple of years, it's been flat. It's been almost zero. So had you bought 2 years ago and now you're retiring and moving today, your house value didn't go up and it could have gone down a little bit. And now you got to pay for realtor's fees and you don't have any equity in the home to make that happen. So the shorter your timeline is to staying in this home, the more risky it is. The longer your timeline is, the less risk there is. Over time, I'm actually going to pull up a chart and show you very, very quickly. Over time, let's see, what is a good, let's go here and let's go here. Hold on here. Over time, the value of home prices has always gone up. Now, listen to what I'm going to say, has always gone up over a long enough time horizon. So this chart that you're seeing right now, this chart goes over, this is St. Louis Fed, it's the federal government, Federal Reserve, that gives us these numbers. This is home prices since 1960, early 1960s, 1963. And this shows what home prices have done. There is not a single 10-year period of time where prices have dropped. Now, you might have some drops. Hold on one second, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, and good thing I was able to hit mute. So, yeah, prices that dropped. In the early 90s, we had prices that dropped. And so we had prices in early 90s up to $126,000. And they dropped. And they dropped to $117,000. That was almost a 10% drop. But they were back up to the $126,000 in 2 years. Now, the biggest drop we saw was right here. So in 2007, the average home price in the United States was $257,400. That fell all the way down to $208,000, almost a 20% drop in home prices in literally 2 years. But prices were back up to that 2007 number by 2013. So you're talking about 5 total years for prices to rebound nationally. Now, again, in some areas, it took longer. Some areas are shorter. These are national numbers. But there's never been a 10-year period of time where prices have been lower at the end than they were at the beginning. And so the key for anybody, whether you're 60, whether you're 30, is, hey, if you're looking at buying in a short time horizon, meaning keeping this home for a short amount of time and trying to sell it, and you're putting a small down payment, you're taking a really, really big risk, and I would think long and hard about whether that's a good idea. But if you plan on staying here for 5 years or longer, really all of these rebounds happened within 5 years. Now I say plan on staying for 10 and you're really safe, because in 10 years, this house in 2007 was worth $257,000. Guess what? In 2017, it was worth $318,000. That was a $75,000 increase. And if you kept it for another 5 years, so now we're looking at 2023, that house was worth $442,000. That house almost doubled in that timeline from 2007 until now. So it's important to understand time is on your side. What we're seeing right now is we're seeing prices being somewhat stagnant. Well, that's no different than we've seen at other times where things have leveled out. Maybe they drop a little bit, but I don't see us having the same kind of a drop that we had back in 2007, because that drop was because everybody had an adjustable interest rate. And everybody had to refinance or their payment went up. And so when your neighbor lost their house, your value dropped a little bit and you couldn't refinance yours, and your payment was going to go up and you couldn't afford the higher payment. You could afford the payment you had, but you couldn't afford the higher payment. Well, that's not likely to happen because the majority of home buyers, homeowners right now have a fixed interest rate. As a matter of fact, most of them have a fixed interest rate that we all envy at somewhere between 2.5% and 4%. So that makes for a very, very stable housing market. It also makes for stable house prices because those people don't want to move. They don't want to lose their low interest rate, so they're going to keep that house, and therefore that keeps prices up because there's not a lot of supply. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that answers your question. Anybody else who's watching live, feel free to post a question right now and I'll answer it. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you for trusting me to have the opportunity to take care of you. If you do want to move forward and look at options, I'd be honored to look at options with you. And again, I will end with sharing this screen with the QR code and the website, which is the best place for you to go to get started in looking at options with me. So I really, really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and we'll talk to all of you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.